you for joining us on Next Level Up. Today we're with Varun Sharat, managing partner of Charybdis Capital Management and co-founder of Head Start Careers LLC. It's great to be with you, Varun.
No, I appreciate it, John.
So, as our format kind of goes, we start with the origin story. Let's rewind a bit. What pulled you into finance and ultimately into investing in entrepreneurship?
Sure, I think what pulled me into finance, as cliche as this sounds, it was my eighth grade history teacher, and
Nice.
he got me into the virtual stock market. And ever since that day, I think, it's rare in life where you can find something that you like, it's fun, it's a passion, and let's be honest, pays the bills, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Money,
it,
finance and money go well together.
goes well
Ironic.
together, right? So if you ask me, like, what I think that was that inflection point, what pivoted myself, I think early on going into finance. I think entrepreneurship, and I look back at sort of say pivotal moments of my life. I think this is back when I was in middle school in London. I was selling candy to other students,
Yeah.
and it was sort of a fun, looking back, fun, cute way in terms of, supporting myself, paying for some of my school meals, not asking my parents. But what I've always loved about entrepreneurship, I think it's the opportunity to constantly learn more, interact with people that align with your values, and just make a meaningful impact in your own way. And if you ask me, finance, I had different careers working at different banks, different divisions, different groups. And what finally drew me over the edge to entrepreneurship, I just realized it's like, I want to constantly grow, I want to constantly build. And I felt being in a conventional 9 to 5 job, or we'll just say 9 to 8 p.m.,
Yeah.
making finance appropriate here with some weekend works, wasn't my cup of calling. So I think that was sort of a pivotal moment, just being true to yourself and realizing where you need to be in the long term.
Yeah. So, question: when you're at Citi or Wells Fargo, right? Was there an actual point that had you rethinking that? Was it just trying it on? You're like, yeah, this ain't for me.
Yeah, I would say, City, I was fortunate. It was a rotation program. So I think it was probably the best decision of my life in terms of, rotating across different groups, divisions. Wells was on one specific team, for two years. But I think what made me pivot more to, I think, entrepreneurship was that, I wanted to gain different skill sets. I just wanted to I feel that I was constantly making improvements, becoming, a better person. So I wouldn't say it was one specific point. I would think I was fortunate having good managers. It was just that outside of work, I always had entrepreneurship pursuits. So back in 2017, I remember when I started creating my own Airbnbs, right? The
Yeah.
short-term rentals
Nice.
back before any regulations were really there in place versus today, where you need a
Yeah.
permit. It's a much more of a formal approval process. And back then, it was kind of, I feel how crypto was, right? On the
Right.
down,
Wild, wild west.
Wild West, anything went. So I always had these entrepreneurial pursuits outside of work, that I was sort of managing day to day. And I just realized that, I like building relationships with people. I like, solving problems. And I figured at work, you were always somewhat limited,
Yeah.
regardless of the role you had, regardless of, you know, again, terrific organizations and, good managers, but there's only so much you can do because every firm is looking for a specialist and not
Yeah.
someone who's a generalist.
Yeah. I got it. Yeah. I found at Ernst Young the same thing as you get pigeonholed the bigger the organization is because they've got 20,000 employees. So, they don't need the well-rounded person. That was my thing. Is I wanted to be the jack of all trades. I didn't want to have to just do one thing. That just makes me crazy. So inside all that, was there anything Wall Street taught you that you now feel you have to unteach your coaching clients, like to
Oh yeah,
get a new
that's
mindset?
a tough one. I think I would say I think I think a couple of things I think Wall Street taught me well was which I think was helpful for coaching. It's I was fortunate enough that I was more on sales, relationship management roles. So you get really good at, how do you build a relationship with someone? And I think two, I think it's maybe more of a value set, right? Not being transactional, right? Always being open to any conversation, always connecting with people. I think being open-minded goes goes a long way. In
Yeah.
terms of unteaching, I think coaching clients in terms of skill sets and so forth. I think certain times, even though I don't view myself as necessarily an aggressive communication style, showing people how you have to aggressively network, right? Wall Street wants people who are hungry, right? And showcasing that hunger, which is not the easiest, right? To do that, right? When you pick up a phone call with a stranger, right?
Yeah.
Convincing someone within 30 minutes, this is the job, right? Or I remember, I think what I said once in one of my interviews, which was, all I want is a seat at the table. I don't mind within 3 months or 6 months if I get fired, but all I want is an opportunity to prove myself, right? That true hunger and desire,
Yeah.
which I think is so hard, whether it's Wall Street or not. It's so hard to find those passionate people and individuals and convey that across.
Yeah. 100%. Awesome. All right. So let's bring it to the present, what you're building today. Can you kind of walk us through the thesis at Charybdis and what makes your, as you called it, the unconditional, or no, sorry, unconstrained model different from usual VC hedge fund approaches?
Certainly. I realized that given my industry expertise, being fortunate to work across different regions, different industries, all right, consumer, industrials, tech, and even having opportunities during business school to intern at different investment firms. I said, I said, you can't really necessarily compete with the specialist, right? Somebody who
Right.
has 20 years, 30 years of experience who really just knows a certain sector well. I said, where my value and expertise is probably more of a generalist, having a high enough understanding, but that high enough understanding can inform whether to make a decision or not.
Mm.
And the whole purpose of Charybdis was to primarily advise on the financial side, so advising startups and businesses, and then family offices on their investment portfolio. And so the way I learned over a period of time how you position yourself in terms of a generalist, but who knows just enough that you can get by, right? And that
Yeah.
you can dive through. And I think the hardest part, as you know well, with a lot of these family offices, it's a very, I think, closed off network, right? In the
Yeah.
sense that it's who knows who knows how. And I think, I hate to say it, I remember the first one who I got connected to an individual. I was out remote in the Far East, and we did a Zoom call for 30 minutes, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, let's start on some project work." And that was almost, if I think about it, almost 2 years ago. And now
Mm.
that's continuously evolved more, and as the scale goes. So I think it's knowing that you're playing the long-term game, and trust is tough to earn. But once you have smaller amounts of trust, you start off with a smaller task and get larger and larger.
Yeah. Really great. It's like building momentum, right? Get started and the old analogy you're pointing about cliches, right? The crawl, walk, run mentality. So inside of that, right, and you're talking about the generalism. So how do you balance the conviction you have with the optionality that, has to cover multiple sectors, whether it's AI, skincare, ed tech, or any of the other ones that you're working with?
Certainly. So I think the way I try to balance it is, I've built a good repertoire in terms of specialists, right, in different industries. So an example of that would be, say, for AI, I have a good friend who works at one of the big fan companies on the AI labs, right,
Yeah.
building those relationships so, that you can bounce ideas and thoughts off it, because everybody knows that you can't be an expert in 20 30 different subjects.
Yeah.
But I think it's important is having the right people that in specific areas that are the experts. And I realize more and more for a lot of the family offices, you know that's kind of what they value, is that they know you don't know everything, but you have the right person, or you know how to get to the right result, and you're doing it kind of in a structured way and approach.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, professionally, I've done that, right? My Rolodex is, I don't always have to be the smartest guy in the room, but I have a lot of phone numbers to the smartest. I don't want even take gender out of smartest people in the room, so I can give them a call. I got it. And real quick, do you have the biggest surprise? Like, what's the big reveal? What's the biggest surprise you've had in running family office aligned investments?
Sure. I think the biggest surprise, I think for myself was, I think a lot of times people imagine these family offices as having very, sort of rigorous investment processes. I'm
Uh,
not, a lot of the family offices I work with do have that, but it's also understanding the overlay in terms of things that are strategic. It's not necessarily about just making a good investment. It's like, okay, I make a good investment, but this helps our overall business. It's kind of understanding the whole strategic value behind it. I think a lot of times when I came into it first, I always look at it as, okay, this is a good investment. You're going to make 5 times or 10 times your money. And while the focus is to grow their capital, is to do it in a way that aligns with their sort of priorities,
yeah,
whether it's charity, whether it's the charities, whether it's their primary business where they've generated most of their money. So it's kind of that alignment, and understanding that. And I think the tough part there is most family offices, are secretive, right? They don't have a website.
yeah.
You're tough to find people even on LinkedIn. People are very, very, I think, coy. It's almost like this hidden industry, behind the entire sector, behind the entire finance world.
Yeah, got it. It is, and it's interesting. It's almost like you got to turn over the rocks and oh, look at there's what I'm looking for. So let's switch gears to Head Start careers. So you've helped more than 300 professionals land elite roles. What gap did you see in the market that made you start this? I won't call it a
Sure.
side hustle, but another entity in that entrepreneur, putting your entrepreneur cap on.
Yeah, I mean, I felt, I think coming out of business school, I saw, and this was almost now, I think almost, wow, it's shocking to say, almost 3 years ago now. It seems like ages, but I would say, just seeing a lot of really qualified classmates weren't able to get good jobs. And it was not because they lacked the technical skill set. It's not that they couldn't fit in with the organization. It's just that they didn't have sort of a structured way to go about it in
Yeah,
terms of doing that. So before starting Head Start careers, I was a mentor on several other, finance mentoring platforms. So I got an understanding of, okay, this works, this really doesn't work. So almost, I hate to say it, getting that back end intel
yeah,
uh,
yeah,
for the competitors. And also, I love mentoring. I love giving back. And I think, when you give people guidance, there's a true, sense of positivity there. So with Head Start, I think there was an opportunity gap. I felt there was a better way to do it. And when I started off, I did all the coaching, right? So I said, okay, because I need to come up with my quote unquote secret sauce, okay, on what works, what doesn't. And the hardest part, I think, being in any sort of coaching or mentorship business is knowing which clients you can help, knowing
right.
which clients you can't. And I've gotten better with that. And I think the biggest learning takeaway was that knowing sometimes people aren't ready mentally yet for a change. Don't push them. Let them come back to you, right? Keep in touch with them, check in, see how it's going. But when somebody's ready, they're ready to go, and they have to be in that right mental headspace to be mentored.
Yeah, no, I totally align with that. I always brought the 12 steps into it, right? The first step is they got to admit there's a problem and they're ready for it because
Yeah.
otherwise you're going to tell them to go do X and they're going to be like, yeah, whatever, I'll do that whenever. So when you're working with clients that are aiming for Citi, Google, Bain, some of the, top people in the industry, in their industries, what is the biggest mistake you see job makers making at that level that you're working with?
I think biggest mistake is, I think a lot of people, especially call it post-pandemic and the rise of AI,
Yeah.
uh, people have been undervaluing networking, right? Like just the old school way of reaching out to people, having a conversation, because right now with any, I think any top company, they're getting hundreds, if not thousands of resumes for each position. And to
Yeah.
be frank, quite a few of those people are qualified. They could do the job, they fit in. And the only way really to stand out is, I think, in most ways that people can stand out with is the networking, right? Getting to know members of the team, showcasing your skill set, and building those relationships. Um, Now, I think the reason why a lot of people don't do the networking, it's time consuming, right? You're gonna have a lot of no's, right? People will just
Yeah.
say, you know what, just don't have the time, don't find the time. You might have a conversation, but it may not go anywhere. So, but I think that's the toughest skill set because they're, just applying online. I think everybody likes to go with LinkedIn Easy Apply, right? Send hundreds of applications that that could take months, years. There's no expected time payout, and unless they've done something extraordinary, I mean, I would be like, okay, you won, you're an Olympian athlete, or
Yeah.
you had some crazy sort of profile, which I think 99% of us don't have that sort of profile. Or I think that networking is the biggest differentiator that someone can do. Networking the right way, building those relationships with the company.
It's crazy. Like I've had a saying forever, and maybe this is because of the entrepreneurial cloth we're cut from, but like whether you're an employee, whatever, you are an entrepreneur. Like you're selling yourself, right? You're looking to provide value. To your point, sometimes you're just looking to get a seat at the table because you're at the beginning of a career or a changed career, uh, and it's all about sell, sell, sell. You can't, if you're just one more hand in the thousands of posts, good chance, as you said, you're not, you're going to get overlooked. Um,
I agree. It's and I think I would add to that, right? I think the other thing which a lot of people struggle with is, nobody has like a linear career path, right?
yeah,
He's done something different. And I think how do you tie in all those experiences you've had? Because it's you have to craft that narrative, right? To the employer or to the prospective employer.
yeah.
And I think the toughest part is people don't focus on the skills they've learned, right? And how do you connect each of the skill sets so that it eventually leads to the right role or right job?
Yeah, it's really good. And because being on the other side, usually, I've hired several hundred people. Uh, to your point, the odds of me getting a unicorn that perfectly matches everything I'm looking for is also zero. So it's about how you ask those questions so you can see what, even help them tie those together. Because sometimes I'll read a CV and I'll be like, oh, this guy looks or this girl looks really good. I think, we might have something here. And then when I ask them a pointed question about something that I thought was a huge value add on their CV, they don't even, they're like, I don't know if that's human nature that we don't like to be appreciated or acknowledged or what, but it always blows me away that they don't lean in and be like, oh, yeah, yeah, this is what I did. This is how it worked.
No, exactly. I think that's the tough part, right? It's also, I mean, in addition there, I think knowing what's relevant, right? I think sometimes people want to put everything on their whole life story, right, onto a resume, which is great. But at the same point, you got to focus on, you have to have what stuff is just relevant and what skill sets and just focus on that. And I think the last point, I think which you brought up indirectly is, at the end of the day, people want to interact with people, right? Like I would always tell everybody, have your list of interests on your resume. Like, what do you do for fun outside? Like your hobbies. Like I always put on my resume, avid Italian foodie, right? And every time it's an icebreaker, right? Ironically, talk about Italian restaurants for 5, 7 minutes, right? What's the best spot in town? Are you looking at Joe's versus John's in New York City, right? What
Oh,
is your places? Kind of humorous, kind of break up the ice because I think nowadays, I think people are not interacting as much and you're behind the screen or you're behind your phone texting, and I think that element of human nature and how we interact is still important.
yeah, I had a manager that really got that and had a manager that would always get them to come out like when the second tier interview was like, we're gonna go have dinner or whatever, because it's exactly that. Let's see how you interact in public and yourself, and like maybe let your guard down. And because during the interview, I unfortunately I think part of the problem is people are just anxious. It's like,
Yeah.
they want the thing. I mean, they're obviously looking for not just a 9 to 5 or a paycheck, but they're probably aligned with what that company does or they think it does.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more, right? I think a lot of it is how do you get yourself in a calm headspace beforehand? How do you sort of calm your nerves? I think everybody, goes through that, and I feel especially for the younger generation, right? It's nerve-wracking, right? Because you've gone through college, right? You're trying to land your first job, and it's so important to get onto that ladder, right? That first rung.
So let's look at the future. 2 or 3 years, what do you think success looks like for Charybdis, for Head Start, for you?
Well, I would say, I guess starting off with the question for me, I think it's, continuously growing, right? Mentoring, I think more individuals, being a positive guiding factor, right? And continuing to make impact on a larger scale. So, on the Head Start career side, right? Move more into sort of that, corporate coaching aspect of it. And I think doing it in a different way, which is, I think a lot of companies undervalue that HR function, right? For trying to find the right talent, right? Identifying the right people, but more importantly, what are the right roles within the company, right? You could have the right people, but they could be in the wrong roles, and really building that organization. Because I think having the best people, regardless of what the organization does, is the most crucial success factor. And I think giving that level of importance. On the Charybdis Capital side, continuing to just work with more interesting clients, family offices, and even as of late, recently working with an interesting startup accelerator, continuously to get more and more exposure there. And, I'd say the end goal is I would say, as cliche as that sounds, to make the world a better place and to um, leave it, hopefully to leave it in a better place and to make some sort of positive impact, and change, and, inspire others to do so as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. I can't remember some Fortune 50 company CEO. He's like, my assets leave at 5 o'clock, and my job is to make sure they show back up at 9 a.m. So I really got it. Thanks, Varun. I love how you blended hard finance with such a human approach to growth. And if people want to learn more about what you're building with either entity, what's the best place for them to send them?
I think the best place to send them is my LinkedIn profile. I think I think something, I think, John, you relate well, being an entrepreneur, right? You have to have a visible profile, so to speak. And so that, or, more than happy to also even share, my personal cell, with individuals who want to reach out. I think I'm always open to having conversations.
All right, great. We'll drop that in the bio below, or the info. And thank you, sir. Really appreciate catching up.
No, I do appreciate it, John. It's been a pleasure, and I really look forward to it.